I'm going to hand straight over to Bianca and please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the lovely smiles around the room. I always feel very welcome when I'm in this group, so it's great. Yeah, I am winging it a little bit because I've got about just less than 2/3 of the time that I was meant to have because we started the whole thing late, not because of you. So I'm kind of cutting things out as I go along. So please bear with me. I'm going to do the best job I can. So I want to take you back to, so this is me from a few years ago. I look very happy. I'm smiling in the photos, but I was absolutely miserable inside. The worst was a day when I left work and I couldn't breathe. My throat closed up. I couldn't get any air in. I had no idea what was going on, and nothing at all I did helped. So the only thing that I could do was turn around and try and get back in the building. And I remember kind of just half slumping against the door, and luckily somebody came and opened the door and let me in and called an ambulance, where they came and checked me out. And I was really confused as to what had happened. I'd always been very healthy, but now looking back at me being so shocked, it's amazing that I was shocked, really. Now it's really obvious what was going on. I mean, the job I was in, it had been a great career move. I was working in a tech startup. It was really exciting. We were right at the cutting edge of what we were doing, and there was some great teams there, and it was a really great career step up as well. So I started off the role feeling really excited about what was ahead of me. So I started off feeling great, but I soon felt a lot more like this. And then that very quickly moved on to this. There were people who I'd worked with for years disappearing. No one ever mentioned where they'd gone. Their name was never said again. Slack was there for bullying. That was the purpose of that channel. Senior leaders would scream at people across the room if they didn't agree with what they were doing, and that was just normal. But this had become so normal for me that I didn't recognise what problem it was, and that actually I was suffering pretty badly, as well as lots of other people suffering really badly. Most days I'd go home and I'd be crying because I was absolutely miserable. My confidence was at an all-time low. When I dared to stand up for things that I believed in and tried to say that I didn't think what was going on was right, I just got slammed down, and there was a lot of conflict. So I was super stressed. Everybody in that job, in that place, was super stressed. And I couldn't lead in the way that I wanted to. I felt like the way I was leading my team was all about protecting them and shielding them from what was going on, rather than actually being able to develop them and to think about how to get the most out of them and support them. I knew it wasn't sustainable, but I was really low and I was really confused, and I had no idea what the next step was. How could I get out of this? And I thought, well, I was so confused. I didn't know if it was the role, I didn't know if it was the company, or was it tech as a whole? Did I just want out of tech? I just knew I needed a total change, and I really wanted to do something that would help other people to not have to feel the way that I was feeling. And I didn't know what that looked like either. So I started kind of playing around with the different things, looking into different things. And that's when I discovered coaching. I couldn't find a very good image for it, but I think, this does the job. So I did a free weekend. I fell in love with it, and I thought, right, this is pretty incredible stuff, and maybe I just want to leave tech and go and be a coach somewhere. So I went and started training, doing a course down in London, traveling down at weekends. But when everything I was learning, I was thinking, actually, this would be amazing with my team. This could really help them to develop. So every time I learned something new, I'd bring it back to my team, and I started seeing amazing changes. And people who I had thought were really frustrating and why can you not do anything for yourself, suddenly they were developing and they were owning pieces of work, and they weren't coming to me as much to give them solutions. And I realised that a lot of why they had been so frustrating was because of the way that I was leading. It wasn't to do with them at all. I just hadn't been empowering them. So yeah, I totally fell in love with coaching, and I became a lot happier. Not happy enough, I was still in that place, which was horrible. So I ended up leaving and I went to another tech startup where they were really embracing coaching and they were really up for me using coaching through everything that I did. So that was great. And I became a lot happier, and I realised that what I needed all along was I needed autonomy and a way to give autonomy to my team, which meant that I needed senior leadership to be bought into that way of working as well. And I needed an inclusive culture where everybody could feel like they had a place and they could belong, because that's the only way that people thrive. And also, it makes business sense as well. The more diverse your teams, the more diverse the thinking and the problem solving and the ideas. And I care really deeply about people and people's happiness. And I thought that that was kind of a weak point, or I'd been led to feel like that was a weak point before in my career. But I realised, actually, this is really powerful. When I can use this caring and use it with some really great tools, like coaching tools, I have a much better impact as a leader. And the whole team are developing a lot more, and suddenly they're capable of a lot more. So it just makes sense. So I learned to start to embrace that side of myself and that caring side, which was, it just felt really good just to be able to be more of myself. And yeah, suddenly I had a team who they were really close knit. We even all went on a holiday together once because we were just working so closely together and just got on really well and supporting each other really well. And we also, it meant that we had ways of working where, because I included everyone in everything that we did in building new ways of working, building processes, it baked in continual improvement because they had such a stake in everything that they wanted to make it work. And if something didn't work or something started going wrong, they thought, right, we want to fix that, because it was their process. It wasn't just something they'd been asked to do. So that's a bit about my background. I'm Bianca. I've been in senior leadership in tech for about 20 years and supporting businesses through to acquisition. Qualified as a leadership coach. I now run a business called Sprout Coaching. And this year is very exciting. I launched a program for a coaching training program for tech leaders, which was really great high point for me, because it means that I can help other leaders to go on that journey that I went on to create these workplaces that I really believe in, and to make more happy, inclusive cultures where people can perform a lot better. I'm also Dutch, I'm a diving instructor, and I'm a mummy as well, so just a little bit more background. And I love animals, so I just make sure you know that. We're not going to talk about your leadership challenges because there isn't enough time, but going to talk a little bit about what coaching is, how it can help certain challenges, because I'll just talk about challenges with the tech leaders who I work with, because they're probably going to resonate a lot with you, and there'll probably be things that you've seen. And we're going to talk a little bit about coaching and how you can get started with having coaching conversations yourselves, because they're really useful if you're a tech leader. They're really useful just with your colleagues. They're really useful with your partner, your friends, your kids. And also if you're in sales and you're talking to clients, these are just really powerful tools to have that will help you to get more out of yourself and others. So coaching, it's talked about quite a bit, and quite often different people will have different understandings of what coaching actually is. So coaching is the opposite of giving advice. So often people say coaching and they mean mentoring. Mentoring is when You're giving people the benefit of your advice based on your experience, which is brilliant and super powerful and really useful. Coaching is different. Coaching is like if you tell your friend about a problem, that friend will usually jump in and say, oh yeah, me too, that's happened to me, or this is what you should do. And it'll either take the focus away from you, where actually you really just need to be listened to, or they'll give you advice that just doesn't really work for you because they're a different person from you and you have different wants and needs and experiences, and what they're telling you to do might just not work for you. So what a coach will do is listen really deeply to what you're saying, listening to understand and to be curious, not listening to jump in and tell you a solution. And they'll ask you questions to help to guide your thinking so that you can come up with a solution that really works for you in your context and for who you are as an individual. So like the person that I used to work with, who always used to come to me with problems and never any solutions, when I started asking him, okay, so what have you thought about so far? And what are the risks attached to that solution? What's the worst that could happen? And who else could help you here? What are your resources? Just asking questions around the problem. And he started doing a lot of that thinking himself. So the next problem he had, he'd be way along the journey of doing all that thinking before coming to me. So you're building the capability of people to think through problems and to risk assess. Anyone got any thoughts that either if you're a tech leader, any frustrations, or if you've got a frustration with a tech leader?
Command and control as a way of risk management. So things are risky right now. With finances, reversion, the command and control because of it. It feels safer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to say that with coaching, it doesn't mean you should always coach. You do have to kind of decide, is this an appropriate time to coach or not? And if it's like really high risk and short deadlines, then it might not be the right time. But a lot of times it is the right thing to do. So yeah, thank you.
I was going to say patience, because sometimes I feel like you want to, help, try and do the right thing, coach people, but you've got to get the thing done by Friday. And it's like, so it's like trying to balance things. Yeah,
that's so valid. And I think quite often we get in the loop where you think, oh, it's so much quicker for me to either tell you what to do or sort it out myself. But the problem is you get stuck in that loop where you're kind of training them to keep coming to you with the problem. And the next time they've got a problem, they'll come to you again. And so as your team grows, you have more and more people coming to you with more problems or wanting more answers. And so the weight on your shoulders just gets heavier and heavier, and people aren't developing. So it's frustrating all round. So how coaching can help is all of these reasons. I won't go, and more. I won't go through them all right now, but if you help people to think through a problem or to come up with a new idea, a new way of working, then they feel valued. You're telling them that you matter and your opinions matter, and I trust that you have something that's really worth saying. Because if you keep giving them answers and you're kind of saying, well, you don't really know enough, or it's not really relevant what you have to say, and that's a really terrible way to build psychological safety. You're just getting rid of it, basically. And that person's self-worth is going to take a real battering as well. And if you're a coach, then you're open and interested to what works for your team. And this is relevant whether you're a leader or not. If you're curious about other people's experiences of life, of work, what works for them, how they work at their best, and ask questions, then it's a lot easier than trying to figure it all out yourself as well. Like if you've got someone maybe with neurodivergence or someone that's different from you in some way joining your team, and you don't really know how to lead them or how to work alongside them, if you're just kind of a task manager, then you're trying to come up with all the solutions yourself. Whereas if you're a coach, you're instead asking them, you're being curious about their experience and how do you work best? Is there something that I can do to support you? I've used this before. Is that going to work for you? Or, and just being curious, and you don't have to have all the answers. You just need to have the questions, and other people will give you the answers, and life becomes a whole lot easier, and people feel listened to and heard, which is pretty magical because so often that doesn't happen. So I've got a coaching model I wanted to briefly take you through, which is, it's not how to have every coaching conversation, but it's a structure for I'm going to go through, don't try and read it, don't worry. Well, you can, but you'll be able to see it a lot easier in a second. This is just a structure to follow for when you're right at the start and you're not really sure how to have coaching conversations yet and you want to give it a go, and maybe you've got someone who just comes to you all the time with problems and you want a different way to deal with it. And like I said, this could be a child coming to you with something that they don't know how to do. It could be someone on your team, a teammate, or it could be, if you're a leader, it could be someone in your team or a colleague. So this is my coaching model called the Clarity coaching model, and it stands for, so first C is center yourself. So take a breath, think to yourself, am I in a good position right now to have a coaching conversation? Because if you're really stressed out and there's like a P1 going on, then you're probably not gonna be listening and nice and calm and curious about the other person's experience. It's probably not going to be the right time to coach. So see if you're in the right place to give the conversation and the other person the attention that they deserve. And also, if you think you are in the right place to do that, start with an assumption that the other person has got a better idea than you. Even if you kind of have a little voice in your head thinking, no, but I know better because I've seen this before and they haven't been in the job for very long, just try to put that to one side and think, no, they might have a better idea than me. I'm just going to be really curious about that and see. So many times I've used coaching and kind of thought I probably had a better idea than they were going to have. But I thought, I'll just go with it anyway. And then they've come up with an idea and I thought, wow, I never would have thought of that. That's amazing. That's a really great approach. So you can be really surprised. So C for center yourself. L, listen and launch. So start with a question like, what's on your mind? Rather than jumping in straight away with, how can I help? Because that's kind of going into that rescuer mode where you're saying, right, I'm going to sort this for you. So just hold off with asking how you can help to start with. A, assess coachability. Ask yourself, is this a good time to coach? So not if it's urgent or if there's fixed requirements, like maybe there's legal requirements that, so things have to be a certain way anyway, or if specific knowledge is needed. But otherwise, go ahead. R, root the issue. So listen deeply and be curious. Avoid jumping in. So silence has a big part to play here as well. Don't feel like silence has to be filled, because quite often that's where the magic happens and you're giving the person space to think something through. Avoid advice disguised as questions. When you start coaching, you can often fool yourself into thinking you're coaching by just saying things like, oh, have you thought about trying this? And as long as there's a question mark at the end, you think, oh, I'm coaching because I'm asking questions, but really you're trying to lead them in a certain direction. You're not asking something nice and open. With the root the issue, what you're trying to get at is sometimes people can come to you with lots of different complaints and saying lots of different things. So you're just trying to get to, but what is the real issue here? And then identify the goal. Don't let them sit too long in the problem. Identify the goal is, okay, I hear what you're saying. Now let's move to how you would like things to be, because sometimes people can get really stuck in what the problem is. And some people quite like to stay stuck there. That's what they're used to doing, kind of complaining about a certain situation. So helping them to shift out of that and think, well, what would success actually look like, can really help people to move out of that. And get really detailed and visual to make the goal really real to them and help them to see it. T is for talk through options. So what ideas do you have? And who else could help you? And what else? Is there anything else that could help you here? What have you looked at so far? And then you might ask, how can I help? But don't assume. You might think, right, well, obviously they want me to do this thing over here, but don't make those assumptions, because sometimes people will come to you just because they want to be listened to, or they want to get something off their chest, and sometimes that's enough, and they don't actually want you to jump in with a solution. So get clear on what it is that they actually want out of this conversation. Do they want you to help? And then it's up to you if you help in the way that they've asked. You have to kind of be thinking as they're speaking, what am I willing to do here? And that's going to help them, but not kind of enable them to never solve these kind of issues themselves. And finally, your way forward. So asking them, so what's your next step? And what have you decided to do? So making sure that they've got the power. And it's not that you're saying, okay, I hear all your options, this is the one you should go for. You're asking them what they should do. And if it's something that is a bit risky, make sure that you've asked them questions around that risk. So what are the risks with this solution? What could go wrong? And then if you're the leader and that it's someone from your team, ask them to summarize it in an email, which is really super useful, because sometimes you might think you've understood what they're going to do next. They might think that they've communicated it really well, and then they do the thing and you think, what? That's not what we agreed, was it? So by getting them to summarize it in an email, you're helping them to reflect and to think about the learning process that they went through in your conversation. And it also gives you a chance to correct any misunderstandings as well. And then at the end, you can ask, well, what was useful about this conversation? And that can be really useful feedback for you and in your learning to coach. And then you can take that and think, right, well, I'll use that in other conversations if that thing was useful. But it's also another chance for them to reflect back on the conversation and have a think about what was useful there for them. And that can really be a helpful learning experience for them as well. I think actually I'd like you guys to have a go at coaching conversation. That would be really good. So if you can pair up, and what I'd like you to do is one person have a challenge and the other person to don't jump in with any solutions. Okay, it's your job to just be really curious and find out more about what's going on and listen deeply. If you catch yourself thinking ahead to what's the next question I should ask, then you're not listening deeply enough. So this is just a little practice of listening well and then asking some questions just to be curious and find out more. Okay? So we're going to have just 3 or 4 minutes, and then you're going to have a chance to switch as well. So pair up and go for it. And switch. This is great. Might need another one. I'm getting angry now. This is awesome. Thank you, everyone, for getting so involved. I would like to hear if anyone wants to share anything about the experiences. Was anyone given advice? Or did anyone feel tempted to give advice? Yeah. It's really hard because we want to help, don't we? It comes from a good place. And what did it feel like to be coached, to be really well listened to?
Getting off the chest feels bad, feels good.
Yeah.
I noticed I like to be given advice myself.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, okay.
I noticed how much stuff I'd already done to start solving the problem when I
Okay.
started actually vocalising it.
Yeah. And how did that feel?
I felt pretty good actually.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
It kind of focused me on the next step and the next step. See what?
Yeah, that's really powerful in coaching, and that doesn't have to be a coach in a coaching session. It can be just conversations between yourselves as well. yeah, that can feel really powerful. Just being given that space to think and reflect on the thinking that we've already done, and to realise, actually, I'm pretty good. You know, I know what I'm doing here. Anyone else got any thoughts or experiences you want to share?
Just to mention, I think it's a different power dynamic, because if I'm telling somebody what to do, inherently I'm telling them what to do, and it's like the Bob. And if it's coaching, it's more like equal, or if they're, let's say, a supervisor or somebody with ego, or they don't want to admit things, coaching is much better, because there's no question of like, are you still in control or not?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. It takes away that I am your superior kind of thing, and it empowers people, because it says, you know, what you say is, what you have to say is valuable, and I want to hear it, because it's of benefit for me and for everyone. So it's a very inclusive way of leading people. Yeah. Well, I think that's about all we have time for, but I just want to thank you again for being really welcoming, and for getting really involved, and for putting up with me kind of like speeding through some of that as well. Like I said, if there's anything I can help you with or have a conversation about later on, then do get in touch. And I would like to just invite you, as a closing thought, just to think about what one change could you make to be a bit more coach-like. So see if you can think about something, make a bit of a commitment to yourself, whether that's listening more, or just not jumping in with advice, or whatever feels like something that's manageable to you. And maybe write that somewhere at home and keep looking at it and reminding yourself.